Did Crimson Weave's banner flop? That is the question that we're going to be answering in today's video as we take a look at March and February's gacha spending reports. Some of you were ragging on me in the comments a little bit about where these videos were. I was cooking, okay? I needed to wait on all the information to come in so we could get an accurate picture of what actually happened, okay? Stop yelling at me. That's enough, okay? Now, some of you might be thinking, whoa, of course it went well. It's Lucia Crimson Weave. That's not a fair assumption to make. While it did get a little bit of extra attention from Wuthering Waves and what was going on with the beta, that doesn't necessarily mean that it translated to additional attention. So we want to take a look and analyze what exactly happened there, especially with Crimson Weave being arguably one of the most anticipated characters in all of PGR's history and future. So before we jump into the information, make sure to leave your prediction in the comments down below what you think happened on Lucia Crimson Weave's banner. While you're down there, why don't you drop a quick little like and subscribe? I think that'd be pretty great. That'd be pretty helpful, you know? Just do that really quick. Did it do the glow thing? I've heard that if I say subscribe, it will like glow around the button. So let me know if that happened. Before we jump into the full analysis, let's do a quick little honorable mentions here, shall we? Now, something to keep in mind on this report too is that it is broken up into global, JP, JP and global, and CN servers. Now, in the future, they have released reports that's just consolidating all of the spending across all of the servers all of the time, just to give a simpler number to look at. But I think in our case with PGR, it's more important to still be looking at the global server specifically, because that's the only server that was having Crimson Weave release right now. It has already hit JP and CN some time ago. All right, the top game this month was Honkai Star Rail with, holy crap, that's insane, 46, but that's such a wild number. That's crazy. I'm just curious though, what's it like when you take a look at CN as well? Holy shit! $145 million in a single month. Gosh, I think I'm covering the wrong game. I'm just kidding. I mean, look, it's to be expected a little bit. They did release Acheron, who on this Honkai Star Rail side is probably also one of the most anticipated characters. So I mean, like, that's kind of expected, but that's still an insane amount of money for a single month. Holy crap. Going back to our global servers, we've got in second place, unsurprisingly, Genshin Impact coming in with a clean 24 million. Pretty big drop off, but kind of expected with what happened with Honkai Star Rail. And admittedly, that is a combination between global and JP. However, it doesn't really matter because our third place is also a combination between global and JP, with Nikke coming in at a nice 14 million. Now, don't get me wrong, that's a lot of money, but I'm kind of surprised that it's that low, considering that they are in the process of doing a ReZero collab. I would have expected a lot more people to be spending on that, but maybe ReZero doesn't have the same amount of hype and momentum as it had previously, or in comparison to the Nier Automata collab that they had before. Either way, good on you, Nikke. Good luck shift up with Stellar Blade. If I should stream that, let me know in the comments down below. Some other fun games to mention is AFK Journey launching to $2.2 million, which is pretty good for a new release of a gacha game. Aether Gazer going through a bit of a drop from 500 to 300,000, and the fastest fall off in history going to One Punch Man, going from 1.3 million down to 270,000. That one's gonna piss off a couple of you, but like, I still think it's funny, so I'm gonna leave it in. One thing I was a little bit surprised about though is Azure Lane didn't get much of a bump considering all of the recent announcements of Azure Promilia. It could just be that it's just too much of a difference in genre for people to actually care about Azure Lane still, but I would have expected some kind of bump to come from the recent announcements, but well, I guess I was wrong. See guys, I can own up to being wrong sometimes. Jumping down to the bottom of our list, we look at some of the Fallen, with Tact Op Symphony and Love Live both going end of service. However, one game that just doesn't seem to want to die is Heigen Aruthil. And I'm not saying that because I want the game to die, but just because I'm legitimately shocked. Heigen Aruthil has been near the bottom of the list or on the bottom of the list for like months now, and it's still going. So hey, hats off to you, Heigen. All right, with some of those fun mentions out of the way, let's jump back to PGR. But if there's a couple of games that I didn't mention here that you've been playing, let me know down in the comments down below what were some other fun games to mention and how they did this month. Like I said at the beginning of the video, Crimson Weave is probably the most anticipated character of Punishing Gray Raven. Usually I try and couch that statement with saying one of, if not the most anticipated characters, but I'm pretty convinced that Crimson Weave was the most anticipated character of Punishing Gray Raven, even beyond Bianca Stigmata, which, don't get me wrong, she's a fantastic character, but I just don't think think she had nearly the same amount of hype that Crimson Weave had. I'm just gonna be honest. Look, there are some other really cool characters that are coming. Chu's new frame comes to mind. Bridget, even though she's an A rank, comes to mind. Han Ying's new S rank frame that was announced comes to mind too, as somewhat other frames that were really cool. Or Luna Oblivion, who can forget the new Luna frame that's coming? She looks fantastic. But despite the cool momentum behind these characters, I don't know if I've seen the same degree of hype around them as I saw around Crimson Weave. Crimson Weave released a year ago on the CN servers, and global has been hyped since then. I'm not seeing the same kind of momentum around those other characters. So you could make the argument here that PGR is near its peak with Crimson Weave in its life cycle of the game. Some people might not like hearing that or disagreeing with that, but I don't know. I find it difficult to argue that we're working up towards something even bigger. Maybe we'll see some other momentum building around some of these other characters as we get closer, but I think considering Wuthering Waves is on the horizon, I think we're going to see some attention splitting happening, and I don't know if any other character is going to hit that same level. So I do think the success of this character is actually quite important. So on to the analysis. Like I said, we're only really looking at the global server because Crimson Weave has already come to the JP and CN servers, so they're kind of irrelevant to this conversation. Historically speaking, spending on PGR typically ranges between $300,000 to $500,000 a month on the global servers, depending on if it's going into a saving patch or if it is a new debuting S-rank character. Typical spending habits of gacha players is usually within the first week of a game launching. That's when the majority of spending takes place. However, there is still some residual spending that will happen over the course of the patch, as some players who have been trying to test their luck have continued to fail and now they have to swipe to get the character, or some of the other tail end players who decided to wait for some kind of analysis and review to come out on a character before they decide if they're actually going to swipe to pull them. Let's take a look at some historical months for comparison. The few characters releasing before Crimson Weave were also some fairly anticipated characters. September, we had launching Bianca Stigmata, which crossed over into October, with those months coming in at 600,000 and 700,000 respectively. Fairly good performance, definitely above the average. After that, we went into a saving month in the month of November with the release of the A rank Bambinata, which accounts for a pretty big drop down to the 300,000. But as I said before, the typical range is 300 to 500. After that, we had Lee Hyperreal coming in December and January, for both months coming in at an even $500,000. Now, I think Lee could have performed a little bit better, but there was a lot of discourse around the is he skippable conversation, and I think that might have hurt his performance just a little bit. However, I will still say the $500,000 on each month is still a pretty good performance. Following that patch, we went into Ayla Kaleido, which was a free S rank unit, so another dip, but that also crossed between January and February. So actually looking at February and March's numbers for Lucia Crimson Weave, what did she come in at? Well, Lucia Crimson Weave's banner launched in the last week of February, and it came in at a whopping $1 million. An absolutely insane month, only being beat out by the initial launch of the game. But not to be outdone by it, on the month of March, we got another month of $900,000, guys. That is huge. That is big for PGR. Now, I'm going to give a brief disclaimer here for those of you who want to go look at the numbers yourself. When I was looking through the reports, the initial February report had $900,000 listed, but then when I looked at the March report that was reflecting back on the February report, it had $1 million listed. So I think there was a bit of a rounding discrepancy there. I'm leaving it at 1 million because I like the number more. But if you wanted to say both were 900,000, I don't think that's completely inaccurate. We don't have exact decimal breakdowns here, so we've just got the rounded numbers. Also, don't let the colors fool you there. Just because it's red doesn't actually mean it's bad, it just means it was less than the month before. 1,900,000 back-to-back month performance is fantastic to see. So that means even despite having a massive spike on her initial launch, that more and more new players were coming in during this time to do some monthly spending as the game progressed, and people came in to participate in pulling on Crimson Weave, which is a great performance. It's really exciting to see the characters doing that. Yes, before you get into the comments, somebody out there, somebody's going to be in there like, yeah, but it's not Star Rail's numbers. It's not Genshin's numbers. No, it never has been. PGR is a niche game. It's got a niche audience for what it tries to do. So if we're looking at it in its own space for how it's been performing, it has basically doubled the average of what you could see in a typical month coming in with Lucia Crimson Weave. Now, granted, some people's expectations might have been a little bit higher. For me, I still think that's a great performance to see. Doubling your average monthly income for a big character launch, I think is pretty cool. Although one thing I am going to be interested to see is going to be how April fares. I think seeing how well March has performed, even on the tail end of Lucia Crimson Weave's banner, I think that's an indication that we've had a lot of new players come into the game. And so I think what we see in April, as we go into a saving patch, kind of see what a new lower baseline is going to be, I think it's going to be a bit of an indication of player acquisition and how many people have opted to stay with the game and continue to play the game. Like we've talked a little bit on the channel before, there's a little bit of a barrier to entry for PGR, so I'm interested to see how many people have decided to actually cross that barrier and stick with it. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Are you happy about the performance of PGR in these past months? Are you disappointed, and why? I'd love to hear about that. This is a conversation, not a lecture, so I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on it. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. I greatly appreciate you and your time. If you want to support me and support the channel, you can drop a like and subscribe, or you can sign up and join the Patreon to support me in other fiscal ways. Shout out to all the patrons who do support this channel. I can do what I do because of your support for me and what we do here. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.